UBC, inspiring Uganda. The official broadcaster of Nana Land Movement.
Good evening and welcome to Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. Tonight we dissect this transition between Umeme and Uedcl. What does that mean? The lights or the blackout, especially looking at this concession that comes to an end on Monday. Will it be the first of Fool's Day? Who will have the last laugh, especially with the power? About $700+ million invested, 2.3 million people on the grid. But also the question of privatization is one of the biggest questions, and how ready is Uganda Electricity Distribution Company Limited to take over? $190 million already paid to be able to recover what Umeme had already invested in this country. Many questions, very few answers, but the question is, how ready are we? Or shall we see the blackouts and the lights that are missing in some areas? As someone has sent me a message right now telling me their whole area has had no power for the last 3 days. We dissect this and see the energy sector in this country. Is it on an upright trajectory, or are we seeing the downslide that we all feared with UEB? Tonight, let me introduce the guests that are here to dissect the topic. And as I promised at the beginning of the year, two gentlemen are back. On my immediate left, Madam Jen Nalunga, the Executive Director of Sietini Uganda, is with us this evening. Good evening, ma'am, and it's good to have you.
Good evening, our viewers, and thank you so much, Timothy, for having me.
Thank you for accepting our invite and being here for the first time.
Not the first time.
I'm hosting you.
Okay,
yes.
You hosting me. Okay.
Next to Madam Jen is Honorable Paul Omara, representing the people of Uedcl County, member of the Budget and Finance Committees in Parliament. Good evening, Honorable, and it's good to have you.
Thank you, Timothy. You foxed me out when I was in Buyout, struggling to regain my land which was taken. There's a man called Moses Kalangwa, I'm told, he's raining hell over the Police Uganda. So we don't know whether Police Uganda reports to an individual called Moses Kalangwa. But I'm happy that the police have maintained, integrity and professionalism. That is for another day, but I'm glad to be back.
Thank you for coming back. Next to him is the old man of the clan, grandfather to everyone in the country, Chief Executive Officer of the Independent Magazine, Mr. Andrew Mwenda. Good evening, Andrew, and it's good to have you.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Timothy, and good evening, viewers.
Thank you for making the journey. I know you were far, but you made it to be here, and we really appreciate that.
I need to be paid.
Next to him is a Commissioner, Engineer Abodon Atwine from the Commissioner in charge of Rural Electrification from the Ministry of Energy is with us this evening. Good evening, Commissioner, and it's good to have you.
I'm glad to be here. Good evening, viewers.
Lastly but not least, the Executive Director of Uganda Electricity Distribution Company Limited, Mr. Paul Mwesigwa, is with us this evening. Good evening, and it's good to have you.
Good evening, viewers. Good evening, Timothy. Thank you.
It was also purposeful that we put you in that hot seat for any question that will be coming in that direction.
No problem. Thank you very much. I'm delighted.
You can be part of the conversation. Go to our YouTube channel, drop your comment there, let us know what you think. But also on our X platform, we're streaming live on a space there. Drop your comment, let us know what you think. If you're on Spaces, you'll be listening to us live. Also, the number to text us is 0709 60 25 92 for text and WhatsApp. Let us know what you think, and we'll be responding to some of those messages in a short while. Let me give you some numbers. The concession had key priority areas that were discussed. One, especially when Umeme was living in 2005, one was to improve the services there. Two was to increase investment, rehabilitation, and restoration of the power distribution network. Three was to reduce on the energy loss that was between 30 and 40% then. Also increase connectivity in the numbers there. In 2005, earlier on when Umeme came in, there were about 230,000 people on the grid. Today we're discussing about 2.3, upwards of 2.5 million people. To provide reliable and stable electricity, and those are some of the objectives or the key priorities that were in that area. But two gentlemen, at the beginning of the year when we were discussing expectations for this year, were here with us to discuss this patent topic, and we said we would bring them back, both Honorable Mara and Andrew, to discuss this. It's befitting that I start with Andrew. I've watched quite a number of clips of you making submissions about Umeme. You seemed to be the champion of flagging it, how it had saved us, like it was the savior itself that came to the country. Energy losses was one of the main points that you were pushing. But let's start from where you spoke the first show we had. What was this concession about? What are its concerns? Because an NGO wanted it to be made public. Parliament was asking us to be able to review it or get it out. Salim Saleh also made a report about this. Give us a synopsis of this, where we were, what we're in. Are we in a better or worse situation?
So let me give you the background. In 2001, the government of Uganda issued what they call a request for proposal, request for proposal. Something to that effect, RFPs. But it invited private companies to come and express interest in taking a concession for the distribution of electricity in Uganda. 6 companies responded. One was from the United States, one was from Britain, one was from France, 2 were from Spain, and 1 was from South Africa. So those companies that expressed interest were invited to come and do a due diligence on Uganda Electricity Distribution Company Limited, because they had unbundled UEB into 3 parts. 6 companies came here and did a due diligence. All of them, without exception, went away. Only one company, which was a government parastatal owned by the British government, called CDC, Commonwealth Development Corporation, wrote a letter to the government of Uganda saying, we have come, we have done a due diligence, and we will not be able to participate in taking this concession for the following reasons. I'll give a few for purposes of brevity. One, you have Uedcl that is managing this concession. You have had your distribution network there's been no investment in your distribution network for 30 years, so it's moribund. That leads to high technical losses. Your electricity tariff has been the same for almost 10 years in spite of domestic inflation and foreign exchange depreciation. You have set up a regulator whom you say is independent. When the regulator intervened by increasing the price, people demonstrated on the streets, government responded by reversing the decision of the regulator, showing that the regulator is not independent to make decisions. You have one of the biggest problems is the government itself has been consuming electricity and not paying. That is why UEB and its successor Uedcl have serious financial constraints. And if you increase the tariff rapidly, it tends to cause thefts. And these thefts would require a private company to invest a lot of money in security, which it cannot do. So in view of these problems, we will not invest. So Sendaola, who was the Minister of Finance at the time, Keith Muhakanizi, who was Deputy Secretary of the Treasury, and Chris Kasami, who was PSST at Ministry of Finance, went to see the President as an emergency. The government of Uganda was broke, and reported to the President that everyone who came here has walked away from us without the courtesy of explaining why they are not interested. Only one person, who is a government parastatal of Britain, has done so, and I think it was, at that time it was because Claire Short was close to President Yoweri Museveni personally. She was the Minister for International Development, and the government of Tony Blair was pumping a lot of money into Uganda because Blair was obsessed with foreign aid and supporting African countries to get both debt relief and foreign aid. President Museveni, as an emergency, put Sendaola is still alive. I am very happy about this. General Sendaola, if you are watching this show, I beg you, these people should allow you to call in and you explain. President Museveni put them, if I'm not mistaken, actually in his presidential jet. This is how urgent it was. They are flown to London to tell these people, please, how can you help us restructure this business? So CDC came here and said 2 things. One, we don't want to do it alone. We will need a partner in order to spread the risk. So they invited another government parastatal from South Africa called ESCOM. They formed a joint venture called Umeme in order to reduce the risk. Two, they said, we are going to do a pilot for just 2 years. We will come and for 2 years invest, I think, $5 million, non-refundable. We work with you. We see how you respond to a private company running your distribution system. The lessons we'll learn will allow us to negotiate with you a concession. So the government agreed. So they came here. Now, I need to give you a context. At the time, I think Uedcl is advertised for this concession, the technical and commercial losses are 28%. But because of the uncertainty created by the fact that you are changing ownership, people in Uedcl do not know whether I still have my job or I don't. What happens in such a context? You suffer from asset stripping. Now, asset stripping has two aspects. There is the physical aspect. The physical aspect that workers in an organization can systematically steal assets of the company because they don't see a future in it. But that's a small aspect of asset stripping. The bigger problem is workers, unsure of their job tomorrow, can withhold their effort, their work effort. So if you're supposed to collect bills, you don't collect. If you're supposed to fix a line, you don't fix. By the way, right now, Umeme is being asset stripped. Any one of you who lives in Kololo or anywhere in Uganda right now, there is a massive electricity cuts.
Yes.
Because lines that are getting old are not being repaired. Umeme has no promise that it knows it doesn't have a concession in future. There is no need to invest in the line. So if your transformer gets off, it's not replaced. If your wires break, Umeme will drag its feet. Every single thing right now is a mess at Umeme because of asset stripping. So by the time these guys of Umeme take over, these commercial and technical losses have now escalated to around about 40%. It is at that 40% that actually the government of Uganda negotiates a concession. Now, the concession was written in that context. It has many provisions. If you read them blindly, you say, oh, government of Uganda negotiated a bad contract. A contract is determined by the circumstances in which it is negotiated. I'll give you an example, and this debate I have had it with many people in the government. If you go and buy a government treasury bond in Uganda of 10 years, right now they're giving you an interest of 17.9%. Yeah. If you go to buy a government bond for Germany, the Germans, you buy it at 0.5%. Now, inflation rate in Germany has been 2.7. In Uganda, has been 2.5. Is Uganda government being cheated because people are buying its treasury bond at 17, its 10-year bond at 17.9? I want to ask you, are we being cheated? Our inflation is very low. If you look at the price of the dollar in Uganda, it has not changed between 2017 and now. In 2017, June, the dollar was 3,680. Go to URA records. Today, it is the same price. It has fluctuated in between, but over a period of 8 years or 7 years, the dollar price over 8 years has remained fairly the same today and 7 years ago. So why is Uganda having to borrow at very high rates? Because of the risk is considered. So there are many criticisms a person can make of the Umeme concession if you don't understand that the government of Uganda was such a high risk venture. I'll give you an example. At that time, government was the biggest debtor. Am I correct? Yes. It owed Uedcl a lot of money. It was not paying. State House could not pay. Defense was not paying. So in that agreement, they said World Bank offered to put $320 million in a bank account on an escrow, so that if government of Uganda does not pay Umeme, Umeme would get money from the escrow and pay for it, pay itself. People were so angry about that concession. So the concession was written to say, you government behave better. My grandson here, Paul, is taking over. Paul, you watch. The day you take over, these guys will not pay you. So what Umeme has been doing is, remember, government buys electricity using Uganda Electricity Transmission Company Limited, ETCL. It bulk purchases from all these independent power producers, including the government, including EGCL, right? It sells it to Umeme. Umeme sells it to me and you and collects from us. When it collects from us, it is supposed to pay you ETCL. But many times government departments don't pay. If they don't pay, Umeme confiscates the money supposed to collect. The money is supposed to transmit to you ETCL. It doesn't. It withholds it. He will have to do it, or else that thing will collapse. So Umeme found collection rates were about 70%. It has increased now collection rates of Umeme are about 120% because of these Yaka meters. Remember that if you buy electricity on Yaka, you have really lent money to Umeme, am I correct? It is only when you on the P&L, it is entered as, on the balance sheet as a liability. So they don't enter it as revenue. It is only when you consume that unit that is recognized as revenue. So they collect a lot of money up front. So Umeme was able to invest in the network, and in 2012, Umeme decided to go on the international market, on the stock exchange. They call it IPO, initial public offering, to sell shares in the company to the international community. What happened, Timothy? Because in 2001, I told you, not a single person was interested in buying. We had to fly people on the presidential jet to beg investors. In 2011, 2012, whenever they launched IPO, Umeme shares were oversubscribed by 157%. 157%. It means for every 100 shares available, people are willing to buy 157 shares. So Umeme had been so successful in transforming a Marban electricity distribution system into a highly attractive investment for international investors. When they did the SPO, the secondary public offering, among the companies that bidded to buy shares in Umeme, because some investors were exiting, about 5 firms with total investment funds at their disposal of $1.5 trillion were bidding to buy shares in Umeme. So I can tell you what Umeme succeeded in doing is transform an electricity distribution sector that was unattractive to any investor, domestic or international, to turn it into the most attractive investment vehicle in the whole of Uganda. So for me, I am very satisfied that Umeme was a golden chance. Now, government of Uganda started saying
Andrew, you're saying Umeme is a golden goose laying golden eggs.
Yes.
For us.
Yes.
But also, in your submission, the concession is questionable because we really had no leverage on negotiating here.
Actually, I should tell you this. We started leveraging the concession because it was from 2003, I think 2010, or 2011, from 2004 to 2011, 7 years. Then they did 2011 to 2018, then 2018, I think, to 2025, something like that.
Yes.
Now, in the current negotiations, Umeme had negotiations with the president personally. The president said, Umeme said, we want to reduce the return on investment from 20% to 14%. The president said, I want 10. Umeme accepted the 10%. But in spite of accepting it, the president insisted that Umeme should exit. Okay, fine. Here was my view. If you want Umeme to exit, in other words, you're interested in the foreign investors, you can have Ugandans invest in it. We have NSSF. NSSF collects about 185 billion every single month. It has enough funds to buy the whole. Remember, by the way, right now, yes, right now, Umeme is on 56% by East Africans. The international investors are only 44% because Ugandans own 36%. East African shareholders own another 12%, which makes it 56%. No, 20% is owned by East Africans, 36% by Ugandans, of which 23% is owned by Umeme. Now, if you ask me, rather is owned by NSSF, if you asked me to structure Umeme, I would not disband it. I would keep Umeme and increase the shareholding of NSSF because NSSF has the money to buy it. It has actually the cash to buy all the rest.
Yes.
And I would sell it to NSSF on one condition, that Umeme be liberated from being subject to rules of procurement of PPDA. I'll come back again to Paul and tell him what challenges he's going to face. Paul, I'm going to be a prophet of doom. Because once, so that it can exist as a serious business without subject to government rules and government contestations over procurement.
Okay.
Hold a second, let me finish for you. So if NSSF buys all the shares of Umeme and maybe owns now it would move from 21%, maybe it would own 80%. If that happened, really how much rate of return we pay to Umeme becomes irrelevant. Do you know why? Who owns NSSF? Me, you, and all Ugandans. So if government of Uganda is paying a very high return to its citizens, what is wrong with that?
Okay.
You see, if you look at a ledger, I want you to understand this.
Yes.
You should understand this. For me, I believe that one of the problems Uganda has, if you have a foreign company called MTN, it has a rate of return of 50% on investment. Then they make profits and ship them over to South Africa. You have Stanbic Bank, Standard Chartered Bank, Absa Bank, all these big corporations that are owned by foreigners, making huge returns and shipping them abroad. That's a disaster for you. But if you have your own citizens owning these businesses and the government, they're always making these huge returns and reinvesting in the country, there is no net loss. So what would be a loss to you, the consumer, would a benefit be, as a consumer of Umeme, it will also be a benefit to you when NSF is paying you your interest at the end of the year.
Thank you. Let me bring in Honorable Mara. Honorable, at the beginning of the year, you and Andrew had banter here over this Umeme concession. Your thoughts about it as we build the history before we get into the transition here. Was it a good deal? Was it in bad faith? Was it bad manners, as some MPs have said? What is it exactly?
No, thank you very much, Timothy and viewers. You know, when you allow Andrew a chance, he could actually sell ice to Eskimos. Let me go back and say this. You know, the unfortunate thing which has affected Uganda for a very long time is that after the 1971 coup, most of the Ugandan elite were decimated. Most of the people ran into exile. So Uganda lost a very important thing, that is its human capital. And then, of course, we went through wars. And so when President Museveni took over in 1986, literally, the quality of the civil servants that we have, I am beginning to question it. Looking at the contracts, Timothy, that we have signed, not only for Umeme. I was part of the 9-member committee that investigated Bujagali. Bujagali did not want to invest in that sector, but they asked us to de-risk the investment. Uganda invested $90 million first there. Before, and the Bujagali guys came up with about 176 million later on. That's the only money they have put. They have cashed on that thing up to date. We investigated and we've looked at it. And what we have noted is that people took advantage of Uganda at its very weakest. And our civil servants could not really understand what was going on. The same thing has happened with the Umeme. They came here, they find this country in desperado, and they just said, oh, here it is a very easy prey to pick. And so Andrew is talking about those concession agreements. It was basically a clean out for Uganda. So they would come and put the little that they would put there. Because building those infrastructure in their world is not something very complicated, you know, when it's your thing. But you've seen the kind of concessions that there has been made. You just know I'm going to have a killer. You just imagine you do the distribution. I'm not saying they have not done anything great. They help us to increase our distribution network in the country and so forth. But they made Uganda to put money aside. So even if you don't do something, don't do much, you have cash there available. So you basically pocket. You can do your projections and you say, this is what we are going to do. Money is available for you, and you just basically cash on it. And I think one time President Museveni was very angry and saying this was one of the worst contracts that has ever been signed. But who signed them? Our technocrats. And you ask the question, do people really love Uganda or not? Because if I'm given a job, a responsibility to do it, I must make sure I put the interests of Uganda first. So we allowed this thing to go by, and basically the guys have made money, big money, over the time. So the idea of basically bringing down the life of Umeme Uganda is something that I gladly support. And I want to believe that our brother, Paul, who is on the other side, Uganda in the last 40 years, we have managed to build a very strong human resource. that can literally run any entity here. Look at banking. We used to have a lot of foreigners here running as MDs and so forth, as EDs and so forth. Ugandans are now running the banking sector in Uganda. In fact, I was one of the people who was saying, no, if you're going to bring a foreign MD here, please take a Ugandan to another country. The banking sector is done. I believe that with electricity distribution, Paul, you'll have to answer and tell us whether you don't have strong men, well engineered. You have universities all over Uganda producing engineers every year, year in, year out. And we are saying at this time and age, we cannot run electricity distribution company. When I look at Andrew, I begin to think is an extension of the new colonial agents in the country. because the way he talks, he feels Uganda should be, continue to, is hemorrhaging. Where we can actually stop the bleeding, I think we must be bold enough to go forward and do it. Maybe finally on Andrew, I agree with him on one thing.
But let me go to the hemorrhaging you're talking about.
Yes.
At what cost? Because you, Parliament, have approved 190 million
Yes.
for this. And the challenge is,
Yes.
there is a possibility of it not going through, and UDCL could still not be running the power here. We could be in this limbo as a country for a bit of time.
What would not go through?
The 190 million.
Yes.
Because the compensation hasn't yet been determined.
What Parliament, the decision Parliament...
Why did you approve the money in you?
No, what the Auditor General said the figure which has been audited, which they could see clearly, is $127 million. Umeme is saying something else.
Umeme is actually saying $235 million.
Yes. So
Uganda Rural ER is talking about ERA is talking about 142 million.
Yes.
Parliament has approved 190 million.
Yes.
Umeme is asking for 230 million. Really, what?
So what we're doing, because the concession agreement has to come to a stop, I think on Tuesday?
On Monday.
On Monday.
Actually, Sunday night.
Yes. So what we've said is that the figures are not neither here and there. Umeme is still making some claims that they made certain investment within a short period where they put some millions of dollars. The Auditor General is saying we haven't yet confirmed that. You know, we need to look at the assets which are brought in, because the only entity in Uganda that is in terms of auditing figures for investments, even in government, is the Auditor General, to tell us the correct figures. So what we have said is, as a banker, now let me tell you as a banker, you can approve a limit of 190. That is an approved limit. But then there is what we call disbursement. So government of Uganda can decide and say, okay, in terms of what has been audited, is 127. We will disburse that. We'll wait for the Auditor General to finish their audit, which audit they said will be done by the end of the month.
But Honorable, so there's going to be a 10% penalty after 30 days.
Yes.
Another 45 days, there will be 15%. As it increases, it's going to be increasing. How much can a Ugandan pay?
You see,
before Parliament comes to jump in this?
No, what we have said is, what Parliament has said, we are going to pay. There is a very fluid figure, you know, because Umeme is still making some claims. But the Auditor General said we have done 127. That one you can pay. It should not go beyond 135. So what we said is let's approve that 190 million limit. So we'll ask them to disburse a certain amount. So whatever difference that will remain, it is something that is not yet agreed. Because you see, and it might be a court matter as well. Because if the Auditor General has said, this thing here, we don't see it, we cannot justify it, or maybe if you feel you really feel this is, you are entitled to it, then you rather go to court.
Okay.
So we are not going to pay a punitive or a penalty over something which is not verified, which is not basically audited.
Allow me come to Madam Jane.
Thank you.
Madam Jane, when you look at this concession and the buyout, Uedcl, the limbo that we might be in because of the payout, the Ugandan is looking for what is on their meter. The Ugandan is looking for power to be able to have their private business, their small business running. What do you make of this buyout? What do you make of Uedcl coming into it?
You know, maybe I will start from where Honorable has ended. You know, because at the end of that day, we might be interested in the power, you know, but I think as Ugandans, we are because this is our money. What you are talking about to the 190, the borrowing in Stanbic, that's taxpayers' money.
Yes.
And me as a taxpayer, I'm interested in what's going on, and I'm asking myself what went wrong, because if there is a disagreement between ERA as the regulatory authority,
yes,
then Umeme, then Auditor General, then there is a problem with the agreement, because the agreement is there. The agreement is bad, it's terrible, but that's the agreement which we signed. We can do a post-mortem to ask, how did we sign such an agreement? But for me, what I think, Honorable, to say that we go to court, in the agreement, arbitration is where? In London. And that was agreed in the agreement. How much are we going to pay? It's a bad agreement. We signed it. Let us abide by that agreement. And we do a post-mortem.
So we stop crying about spilled milk.
Let us do a post-mortem to say, how did we get here? Because you see, Timothy, this isn't the first time we are signing all these agreements. Maybe this is a wake-up call, you know, but we have been signing all these bilateral investment treaties, these trade agreements. Somebody just signs terrible agreements, and we have been to court because of these agreements. So maybe we need to do a post-mortem. But the way you look at it, Honorable, to say then we pay half, then we pay what? We pay 190. The 190, you are supposed to pay upfront insurance fee, upfront on 190. So you can't tell us that they are going to pay some little money and so on. But Timothy, I just wanted to go back to the issue. You talked about the history, the history. And Andrew started from the request for proposals. I think we need to go a little bit back in history before these call for proposals, to look at how did we start the privatization drive.
Yes.
Because it isn't Uganda alone which privatized. It was the IMF World Bank which told us we have to privatize. And they pushed a certain narrative which we swallowed, that government is inefficient, government is corrupt.
The same thing with UCB.
Exactly. So we shouldn't look at it as isolated, that it was UEB. It was also the broader privatization drive. And for me, I think we are here to, like the saying goes, which come back to roost. You know, we have come to really rethink and be able to analyze whether the privatization, the entire structured adjustment programs, whether they worked for us or not, whether they are working. Because when you see the narrative which was pushed, and I agree with Andrew when he said, you know, UEB, it had no investments, the tariffs were terrible. And we remember, some of us were there that time, you know, electricity was, you know, it was almost like a godsend to have electricity. We had, yes, we had all these challenges. But what we have been asking ourselves, what was the solution? Was the solution to go the private way? Because when I look at what Umeme brought in, what did Umeme invest in Uganda? Because the whole issue, the narrative is that the private sector has the resources. They have the money. They are efficient. You know, they can be able to bring in capital. They are accountable.
Yes.
Issues of accountability. And we need to question this. How much money did Umeme bring in? Andrew has already said it. They came in, IDA, World Bank, brought in a loan. In fact, whatever Umeme has brought in, they have the return on investment. You said it was 20, went up to 10. What did the Umeme bring in? And that's why we should really rethink, would we have been better? Because we are now back with my brother Paul. 20 years back, you know, if we are able to put all these resources which we put in Umeme, in what we are now, would we have been better or not? So for me, I think we need to dig deeper and be able to see really, because I was asking, Umeme, when they came in, they leased what was there, the engineers, you know, they used our engineers, very qualified engineers, from, especially the ones from Kyambogo, you know. They say the narrative that they will create employment, they downsized, by the way. Because I remember a number of yes, were let off, and also they got all these big regional offices, regional offices, because I have some inside information, because I know somebody who was working there.
Yes.
They laid off people, and they capitalized on those people who had the technical knowledge, the good engineers. I didn't see anybody, any white person putting up the meters or the no. They used our people. So when we look back on the entire privatization drive, on how we sold our UCB, and now here we are, borrowing money from Stanbic. We want to borrow money from Stanbic. Stanbic is a foreign company. And we are going to pay through the nose. And we are going to pay, by the way. We are going to pay. And for me, I agree, let us pay. Let us close the chapter. It was a bad deal. It's like a bad marriage, you know, when you keep on it and, you know, just end it, start a new life, you know, learn lessons.
But
what
Madam
we
Jane,
need to do here is to learn lessons.
And they're going to pay another $50 million for operations. We're not even sure if the money they're going to borrow for operations for Uedcl is enough. 400 staff and 2,000 staff of Umeme, you have talked about downsizing. What is going to happen to them? Numbers are, from the inside, is that about 90%, which we're not sure, could be retained.
You see, the way we are handling this issue is like we are firefighting. But we knew since 2021 that the Umeme contract is not going to be renewed, isn't it? We knew. It isn't like it's things are just happening. We knew 2021. And this is what I'm saying, that Uganda, I don't know what's happening to us, despite the fact that we have very good technical people. We are not planning. We don't plan. 2021, we should have planned. We should have planned for my brother Paul what is going to happen, whether the machines are there, whether what's happening, but it hasn't been done. Today, it's like the last minute, you know, we have to do it. We have to get this money. We have, you know, and the problem is ours as Uganda. And that's why I'm saying we need to learn. We need to learn lessons. Where are we going wrong? We educated people, but we are failing to plan. We are failing to execute anything. And that's why 20 years back, we are running to Europe, running to where to help us. Why? Why should we do that? So we are now back on the drawing board. What do we need to do? I think we need to plan better. Let us not just say we need 50 billion for that. Where is it going to go? And if we are to do an audit, because we are auditing Umeme, what they have put in, and we need to audit the value for money, you know. Umeme, it wasn't charity, you know. And I don't want, and when you say they helped up, and that's why they were saying you need to bring in money. It's a pure business. And let me tell you, Timothy and listeners, no country has ever developed using this private sector. No. And that's why I'm saying we need to learn lessons, because the privatization drive is on. World Bank is telling us it's private finance. Private finance has the money. Have you read that article from billions to trillions? That's that drive. We need private finance. We need, you had the risking. Every World Bank, you need to private finance, but you need to de-risking. And this is where we are learning lessons. What does de-risking mean? What we did to Umeme.
Let me come back to you, Madam Jane. But also, I would like to leave with you the national debt. What will it look like? I'll come back to you on that. Engineer Twine, as government, Ministry of Energy there, you, even with government's approval, decided Umeme should come to an end. What was the reasoning behind it? Help us make rational decisions on this decision and how we got here.
Thank you. From the first speaker, we have heard that government needed the service and went out to acquire service. And that's how Umeme came on board with specific terms of reference, what they should do. And agreements were entered. You should do ABCD for this period of time. After this period of time, such and such things must happen.
Have they achieved the objectives or the key priorities that were set in the concession?
Yes, they have. Because first of all, they are supposed to reduce power losses. As we speak, they're in the region of 17%. And they were above 30% at that time, as Andrew explained. They were supposed to bring in private money. They have put in over 700 million US dollars. They were supposed to increase connections. We're at about 250,000, thereabout. We are about to, they have, Umeme alone, and now the customer base is about 2.25, Umeme alone. So they are supposed to improve on power reliability. And I think if you look at 2000 and where we are now, we are much, much better. So really they have done their work in accordance with the contract, in accordance with agreements. But we think now the period that we had given them, because as my sister Jane says, this was a lease. The assets belong to government. The assets belong to you this year. Time has come and government is saying, can I have my assets back according to the agreement?
What are the reasons of having the assets? What are the reasons of you taking over Umeme? What makes sense for us? What objectives are you chasing? You've told us the ones of Umeme. What are government's objectives with taking over?
I think let me start from generation. We started with Bujagari. We called in private sector. The tariff was Uganda, US cents, 13 US dollars. 13. From that lesson, we said, okay, government, can we put in our money and we develop our hydropower plants? The cost of Karuma is 4.9 US cents. The cost of Isimba is about 4.5 US cents.
But
so
all that is borrowed money.
We have a gain. Yes, it is a borrowed money, but you look at the tariff, the cost per unit comes low. So what is the cost? What is the cost now of doing service? I think that's the
highest tariff cost, a unit cost in the region. What really is the justification of this?
The contribution is Bujagari. 40%? Yes. Now with introduction of Karuma and Isimba, we are bringing tariff down.
With dams you're still repairing on borrowed money. I'm trying to rationalize what you're telling us on the objectives. You borrowed money to make these dams. You're still borrowing money to repair them. We still have a high tariff. What a Ugandan pays for as a unit is still high. industries are still paying for more. I still don't get the rationale of why government closed this concession for it to take over the energy sector.
The rationale is just simple. The rate of doing business, unit cost of doing business. So when you say we are still borrowing, yes, but when you borrow, what is the unit rate of doing, for instance, generation, of doing business? So if we do it as a government, we bring down the unit rate, and therefore we bring down the tariff. And that's what exactly we are doing.
Yes.
Our committee investigated and found that Bujagali owes the people of Uganda, at the time, 1.2 trillion shillings, which they were supposed to reimburse because of error that were made by error. So we pay $5.5 million every month to Bujagali. It should be $3.5 million. We insisted, we said the ministry should work on this one here. Now, every time we give Bujagali tax waivers. Now, when are we recovering 1.2 trillion from Bujagali? Because Bujagali contributes to 40% of the cost of power of electricity in Uganda. But the ministry is redundant. They don't want to listen. The people of Uganda are suffering because of technical people. That's why I'm saying the problem that we are having with the Umeme, with Bujagali, it is from technical people, our ministry. They go and I don't know whether it's corruption. Because what do you gain as a technical person in a ministry when Parliament has appointed? We are not Mickey Mouse people from the road there. We did the numbers, we look at the law, and we found we got them. They owe us 1.2 trillion shillings. And we are now supposed to pay them only $3.5 million every month. That will reduce the cost of electricity he's talking about from 8.7 kilowatt hours to about 5.6 or 5.7. The cost of electricity would be good for all Ugandans and will work on the industrialization agenda that the president is talking about. But our technical people here, the next thing they just come through Ministry of Finance, please give us tax waiver. I think we just need to find a way. I think Uganda, I don't know what we need to do. Because we know the problems.
Honorable Mara, you're also indicting yourself because Parliament approves this one.
No. Leave alone this one. This one.
The technical people are not above the law.
No. But eventually, when we studied the thing, we studied the contract. We looked at how much we have already paid to Bujagali. We went into the details. We found, my goodness, there has been overpayment. We should be actually paying them this. And actually, the president actually said the Auditor General should look at it. That was how many years back? Today, maybe Paul, you'll tell us where we are today. So the question is, technical people, please tell us the truth. What is happening?
Engineer Twine,
Yes, please.
even with all the challenges we've mentioned, there's also that we generate a lot of power that we don't consume and still pay for it as Ugandans.
Yes.
So please help me make rational sense of this exit of Umeme and UDCL coming into this business. How beneficial is it to the country, to an ordinary Ugandan?
Yes, if we look at, first of all, we as government, we have programs to increase electricity access. And increasing electricity access is not a privilege of Umeme. Any distribution company, as long as it has the proper structure, as long as it has the proper technical people, as long as it has the resources, will increase access in the country. So that one shouldn't lead us that if we made an agreement with Umeme that after 20 years you are supposed to bring back the assets, they should stay. They should stay. Somebody at that point, the agreement is very clear that after 20 years, UDCL will step in. And indeed, that's what we are doing. And they will continue in the footsteps where they were. They will just continue. What they need is resources, which have been provided, is manpower. They have the structure, they have recruited, the MD will tell you, and what else? So we create the access and we get there.
Before I get to the MD, this reasoning of the concession ending was 2021. Why are we rushing? What happened between 2021 and today that the planning was there, the preparedness was there? Why didn't we implement? Because your line minister came out to say they need $50 million. She said over a period of time to be able to have them operationalized. How comes it's a rush right now that it is everything must fall in, the sky is falling?
I don't think it is a rush. If you look at when we started, in 2022, we went to cabinet, we told them, this is where we are, Umeme concession is ending, how would we move? We got the guidelines. And if you look at the guideline of cabinet at that time, they asked finance, provide the resources. But finance could not provide resources in 2022, which are required in 2025. That's resources. The other thing is that we have to prepare. There is a lot of things going under there. You find that almost in a week we have 2 meetings. So we formed a joint technical committee, which is chaired by the permanent secretary. We formed a roadmap. There are so many things that we have done. That joint technical committee reports to steering committee, which is chaired by the Minister of Energy, and then Minister of Finance is a member, Attorney General is a member. So we have done a lot.
Thank you. Mr. Mwesugwa, let me come to you. As the MD of soon to be, the ones running the power of the country come Monday, God willing, how prepared are you?
Thank you very much, Timothy and viewers. As you have that word on the screen, a new era of reliable power. What we've done at UEDCL, the first thing that we did was to work on the governance of a government institution. For the last 10 years, our effort was to create a good governance structure that looks at performance, that looks at employees, that looks at accountability and responsibility. And we have achieved it. To the extent that we are running a self-sustainable business model. As we speak now, our balance sheet...
some numbers there.
Yes. As we speak now, our balance sheet has no loan. And by June 2024, our total revenue for that year was 110 billion. We had increased from 36 billion in 2014 to 110 billion. No loan at all. How have we done it? When the concession was signed off in 2005, we leased out the commercially viable areas, mainly the urban centers. We remained in the hard-to-reach, far-to-reach areas. And they were being supplied on off-grid stations. Because we're here to serve the Ugandans. They are not commercially viable. The good thing, the government, through the electrification program, extended power there in 2013. So we went in, and these areas were Moroto, Karamoja, Ajuman, up to Elegu, Katakwi, those far-to-reach areas, Buko, Nakapiripirit, and towards Bunagana border and Kisoro and Mutukula. So we are on the outskirts of Umeme. So our effort was, how do we make these areas commercially viable? So by that time, our revenues were 36 billion. Over time, we improved. By 2017. We had stabilized, and we started observing that the private people who are operating those areas have started failing. So because of our governance in managing the sector, now we started taking over. As we speak, we've taken over 5 private operators.
Not as big as Umeme.
I'm coming. Our operation is increased from 4 political districts. We are now operating in 102 political districts. Actually, our area of coverage is greater than Umeme, because we are in the outskirts, in far-to-reach areas where the terrains are terrible. But how have we managed it? We've invested in technology. We've invested in resources, in knowledge and commitment, that all this expansion and the decision actually to take over Umeme did not come from heaven. The government did an assessment on our performance and said, no, I think this is a national infrastructure. It is a high time we manage it ourselves. Because Uedcl, a government company owned by a government 100%, is in a position now to turn around what was termed to be impossible. Let me give you the statistics, how we've worked out. Currently, our cash collection is 100% for the last 3 years. If you connect on our environment, we have 230,000 customers. All sorts of customers, government, referral hospital, police, prison, individual, factories, they're all paying. For the message to our viewers that it is high time we should embrace governance that is the lead of making business. And that is what we've adopted. For example, we have Ministry of Defense as our client. We have 70 barracks whom we are supplying electricity, but they are paying because our billing system is prepaid. And we've reached an agreement and arrangement with them. They are paying. They have never been disconnected. Referral hospitals, they are all paying. And if you want to connect on our environment, to get a connection, you do everything on your phone. You apply. We've eliminated the middlemen there because there were like so many communicos around. So what are we aiming at? To make the service easy and affordable in a right governance environment. So on the 1st of April, we shall be in a position now to take over. What have we done? We've gone through the structure of governance by recruiting people. We've now prepared the back end of the ICT environment. All the vending system, we've set them up. We've tested connectivity of the network. We have now stationed our assets and warehouses. We have stock in our warehouses that are ready to deploy. All the pending connection is under Umeme area. We have the meters in stores. We have a minimum of 140,000 meters and about 30 there in the queue. And our target is to connect a minimum of 300,000 meters per annum. So in that case, it means that we are there. So the question that has come on board, that why are we borrowing? Like any other business, if you want to turn around the current blackouts, the delay in investment, because when the government made a decision in 2022 that Umeme should be leaving, it was advisable that they should scale down the level of investment. That's why we have blackouts now. So what have we lined? We've lined to invest minimum of $50 to $70 million. Is this money available? Yes, it's available. We don't have a vote at the government. And what we are borrowing it on our balance sheet. In 2023, we went on the market to check our creditworthiness. The response was very good. So through our Minister of Finance, they invited for bid for supply of money to Uedcl. Financial institutions have evaluated the company, governance, performance, cash collection, and all the controls in the system. They are willing to lend us money, provided they just get an objection from the government. So we are not
for that loan.
We are not a burden to the consolidated fund. Who pays for the loan?
Yes.
Because of our efficiency, we shall repay back that loan. At which cost is that loan? At
Mr.
which cost?
Uedcl is going to pay the loan.
We are going to pay the loan
Who is
by
the bottom
collecting
line?
the customer. The customer.
Exactly.
Currently, the customer has been paying return on investment 20% net of tax. The loan that you've got, the interest is below 10% gross of tax. Good deal for the country. And our investment is going to be more than 1.5 average annual investment of what Umeme has been doing. For the last 20 years, on average, Umeme has been investing in a region of $35 to $37 million. Our benchmark minimum should be $50 to $70 million. And we have the money. Because the creditworthiness is up in the sky. Why? Our efficiency, our governance, our accountability is not questionable. So for that matter, we are 100% ready.
Before we take the break, let me ask you these two questions. One, the lease assignment agreement that you have, it has in section 216 where inspections are done and reports are given to you. And you said Umeme was good with the inspections that were happening. Two, section 2.7 there says about the network specifics and says UDCL receives quarterly reports on the engineering reports. But there's also 529 billion in defects from Umeme. There are transformers that are aged of 30 to 50 years, electricity poles that are falling, wires that are falling, people that are experiencing blackouts, and you're telling me $50 million to $70 million is the silver bullet to solve this problem?
Thank you very much. We are talking about 50 to 70 per annum for 5 years, starting point.
Andrew was talking about how UEB inherited problems. You're inheriting the same problems. Thunder is striking twice.
Actually, for us, we are above of UEB. We are thinking ahead. We are not thinking on UEB. That's why our cash collection is 100%. That's why our governance can be evaluated by the banks here to give us money. My colleague talked about the lenders who even ran away from Uganda. The people that are going to give us money, the financial institutions in Uganda. That means we are far ahead of the comparatives of UEB. And we should not even talk about that comparatives.
But even the technology has changed.
Yes.
Has also changed.
Yes.
Look at those days. 2000. Makerere was the only university churning out engineers. Yes. 20, 23. Now you look at where we are now. We are churning out over 500 engineers. People have learned to go out and get these skills. So we have the manpower and the skilled manpower, and I don't think that we are in those days of 2000 of UEB.
Timothy, the most important thing is the commitment to deliver. We at UDCL, our commitment is very serious because we know electricity is the backbone of the country. To turn around this country, for us to create infrastructure that is commercially viable, to create jobs, to change the industrialization, we should give a service through electricity to build industries, to create jobs, to reduce the unemployment that is too high. And that's why we thank the government that at least they've seconded us to get the money, but we are not a burden to the government when it comes to paying that loan. We shall pay the loan as UDCL. The same way the customers have been paying the loans for Umeme, but at 20% net of tax.
Let me read some feedbacks.
If you have looked at the Paul, I've assessed him. I think I can trust him to deliver.
We'll get Paul. Let me read some feedback that has come through. Good evening, Timothy. Thank you for the show. Power is off here. Today is the 5th day, and they are telling us to contribute money for wiring because one of the wires got burnt. The tenants are only imagining what to do. Okay. Another one comes in. Thank you for the show. Let's mitigate or merge something that is favorable for a taxpayer and not to loot them. If not, we are better off with Umeme. Bwana ED of UEDCL, your boys are charging money to put our meters back. You will first negotiate the amount. If not, a meter can go off for as long as possible. This is Pade. He talks about quite a number of things. Good evening. Thank you. My question is, why is power especially in the village areas like Namisindwa district, always off for a full month, and you find you have not used power in a certain month, but you find the next month they are billing you, and then you have not even used any power. This is Emma from Namisindwa district, and is raising that concern from the town council there. I hope Mr. Mwesigo have got that one. Thank you for the show. This is Jackson from Namisindwa, updating us on what is happening. Thank you very much. Greetings to the people that are there. But my question is, how will the company benefit us who are in the rural areas with this new change? Okay. Timothy, thank you for the show and the service from Uedcl. We were promised when Umeme was coming, heaven on earth. Today, we're hearing the same from Uedcl. Tell the ED, talking a lot does not mean communicating. This is Teacher Simwe. Okay?
I'm a sadist.
Good evening, sir. This goes to the ED. All Uedcl staff, are they safe? Have you also absolved the people from Umeme? When their contracts expire early next month, what happens to them? Okay. This is Paul from Lira. Good evening, all panelists. A local citizen is hurting when services are not delivered adequately. The buyout of Umeme to me is a relief, as Umeme was making poor service delivery at a high cost. Okay. Finally, before we take a break, thank you for the show. But who is Umeme in the first place? The guys designed something to cheat Ugandans. How did we arrive here in the first place? Looking at the generation agreement, Uganda kept on paying for extra produced power that wasn't used. Coming to the close or buying off Umeme, things have changed, paying us highly. We might go to court. How much did they bring in? We paid for their contract with World Bank. Now they are leaving to have a payout to leave us. Who's talking about this money? This is Chizito. Okay. Keep the messages coming. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll still have power.
Kama nemo pocket, tambula body street, issues are my target. We are what? Unstoppable. We are what? Unstoppable. I'm in a plantation, but on a global mission, internet ambition, full condition. We are what? Unstoppable. We are what? Unstoppable. Oro cash is gone, netaga yo kaloni, nigga mukafoni, money in the zone. We are what? Unstoppable. We are what? Unstoppable. We are good.
With you and MTN together, our ambition is unstoppable.
We are what? Unstoppable!
The government's core mandate is to maintain law and order, safeguard citizens' rights, and provide essential public services.
Remember, one of the pillars of a roadmap is innovation and entrepreneurship.
There has been this question of how are you protecting our indigenous seed?
It's going to be a tall project that answer somebody's question.
For the past 20 weeks, the front bench has brought you insightful discussions on governance, security, healthcare, justice, and commerce.
When you go through this complicated procedure, involve the lawyers, you bring the case against him, the judge will hear you out and pass judgment, and you're out of court in record time.
We remain committed to keeping you informed and engaged on key national matters.
So these are huge. These are powerful organizations which now Uganda chairs. Why don't you come together?
If we haven't migrated to the e-card because of various reasons, including that not all the people of Uganda have smartphones.
You can sit in your house, apply for a passport.
If you have a Ugandan who has a successful logistics firm in the US, it means he can come to Uganda and do a lot more.
Now airing every Monday at 8:30 p.m. with me, Jethro Kasaiji, your interface with the government only on your public broadcaster, UBC, Inspiring Uganda.
is on a mission. It makes our gums happy and our teeth strong. See? We're moving forward and making changes.
It's kind of a big thing.
Colgate Herbal uses traditional nature's herbs and combines it with Colgate Science for healthy gums and strong teeth.
And we'll leave no smile behind.
In a nation hungry for truth, a world where every story matters, there exists a beacon of trust and reliability. For decades, they've been our voice and our window to the world, holding the mirror of our history. With 4 TV stations and 11 radio channels spanning 27 languages, they stand as guardians of information, defenders of truth. With Mascari Heritage Advantage, they uphold every citizen's right to reliable and free information. Their archived stories shaped our past and illuminate our present. Yet now, as new challenges arise and the world evolves, their mission faces its greatest test yet. Be part of our journey and let's navigate the unknown, uncover the untold, and safeguard our future together. Tune into your public broadcaster, for it is the intersection of trust and truth. Because to UBC, your story, every story, and every voice matters. UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Welcome back from that quick commercial break here on Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. In the studio, I'm joined by Madame Jen Nalunga, who is the Executive Director of Siatini, Uganda, Honorable Paul Omara, who is representing the people of Uedcl County, the old man of the clan, the grandfather of everyone, the CEO of the Independent magazine, Andrew Mwenda, and the Commissioner in charge of rural electrification at the Ministry of Energy, Engineer Atwine, and the MD of Uganda Electricity Distribution Company, Mr. Mwesigwa. And we're discussing everything, the Umeme buyout and the incoming to the center stage of Uganda Electricity Distribution Company Limited. A lot of messages both on X and on our X, our handle there. Please keep them coming, but also the number is 0709 60 25 92. A lot of messages, we'll get to them in a short while. But let's continue our conversation here and come to the tail end. Fortunately, power is still available. Andrew, let me come to you. At the preamble of your submission, you had a few concerns. What are your concerns for Uganda Electricity Distribution Company Limited? What warnings would you give them and how would they navigate the hurdles ahead, especially managing the expectations of Ugandans, but also managing the expectations of government?
Okay, let me begin from here. One, I want to begin with my disagreement, before I come to agreement with both Jen and Paul Omara, in the sense that I think Umeme was very good. It transformed the electricity distribution market, made it attractive for lenders and private investors, and as Paul from UEDCL, Paul Mwesigwa has told us, even them as UEDCL now, they can, if they want to borrow, every lender is lining up. The Uganda electricity distribution, the effectiveness of Umeme was that, in fact, for us to develop Karuma and Isimba, it required to have an effective distribution system to collect the money. So he's saying they have 100% collection rates. So if I am trying to invest in the upstream, which is generation, because he is downstream, he's able to collect the money, it makes sense for me. If the downstream are not collecting the money, it means me at upstream, my investment will be in trouble. So Umeme was very good for Uganda. Now, I should tell you that theoretically, I believe government of Uganda and the citizens of Uganda should own this economy. So ideally, I would not want foreign investors, as I have always argued, everybody who has read, I have always said Umeme should have been owned by NSSF. NSF is owned by Ugandans who subscribe to it, and therefore every return comes to Uganda. Now, I have listened to Paul Mwesigwa very well. I am really impressed by what you're saying. I am happy for you. But for me, I will tell you the following things. As warning shots, it is very likely that my predictions are going to be wrong. And I pray that my predictions are wrong because future generations of Ugandans will be happy that I was wrong. But I speak from my knowledge of Uganda, of Ugandan politics. So right now, Umeme, you say, has revenues of 2.2 trillion. You have revenues of 100 billion. So tomorrow, all of a sudden, you will move from 100 billion to 2.3 trillion worth of revenue. These politicians, Omaras in parliament there, will begin looking at you. The wheeler dealers at State House who surround State House like vultures on a cattle or an animal carcass will be looking at it. So here are the risks you face, and perhaps I pray you find the wisdom to manage them. The biggest risk will be political buccaneering. People will want to get a piece of the Umeme pie. If your revenues are 2.3 trillion, let me assume 25% of that are your labor costs, your staff costs. So you'll have about 1.7 trillion shillings where you are actually procuring things for investment, or maybe 1.5 trillion. I do not know how much money will go into, how many are operating expenses. So if you go into heavy investment and you're going to do $200, $300 million worth of investment per year, the people who want contracts will go and badmouth you at State House where you have no voice, unless you have a direct link to the president or to one of his sons-in-law or children or things like that. This is the disaster of Uganda. They will badmouth you where you don't have a defense. He will send his intelligence operatives to investigate who of the lowest intellectual quality, and they will report him wrong things. So you'll find a right man like you trying to do proper governance. The president has actually a different impression. And he will kick you out of that company. These people will send you to jail. I've seen people here in Uganda go to jail when they were trying to do the right thing. So that is one political risk. Me, I want you to look at. So that company, because it all of a sudden becomes very big, may attract wheeler dealers, conmen, and so many other people who have better access to the key decision makers at State House. Who, because I should tell you this, Paul, at the risk of sounding vain, I have fought and defended particular public officials in Uganda who run organizations of that size before the president, and some of them to restore them in their jobs when they're being fought and they don't have the other voice and the president has wrong information. He really is convinced, he can be angry with you, convinced about something wrong, because also when you're a president, you're dealing with so many issues, but so you have to you deal with people you trust. So these guys will come when you issue a contract for transformers worth $50 million or for electricity poles or whatever it is. People will bid. Many of them are connected to the first family. They are connected to State House. They will want their companies, even when they are not efficient or cost effective, to be the suppliers. But they're the ones who have the ear of the president. And I always tell my friends, me, I'm not a church person. So you will have to make political judgments. How do I build relationships with powerful, influential people in the system to ensure my protection? Then we come to these parliamentarians. They can take you on because you are now subject to them as a government company. You go there to approve your budget or whatever it is. You go there. You have not sent bribes to these parliamentary committees in advance. And they will eat off your ears and they will make the public think that you are the most evil person. You leave those. Then you do a procurement. Some person loses. They'll go to PPDA. Others will go to IGG. Others will go to Parliament. Others will go to the press. All of a sudden, you find yourself a subject of disastrous, ill-informed, stupid political buccaneering. So I pray God help our country that this man and the Umeme he's taking over UEDCL are protected, because it is not the good things you do. It is how you navigate the very treacherous political terrain to ensure that you protect the institutional integrity of UEDCL. And sometimes you may find that here you have to bribe a person wrongly so that they don't give you headache. Here you will have to buy off this one. You may give your contract to a particular company, not because it's the best deserving, but it may protect you politically, things like that. You have to balance the technical considerations of the organization against the political reality of Uganda. If you are able to balance those two, I can tell you be a successful person. If you say, I'm going to do the right governance structure, the right thing, my friend, sometimes doing the right thing is not the right thing to do. I mean, you may need to find what is the politically correct thing to do, but which is also not technically damaging to the degree that the company is compromised. That is my risks to you after listening to you.
Thank you very much. Let me read two messages here that seem burning before I come to Honorable Mara. I'm Stephen from Bale. The problem Uganda has is during the recent past and now, in fact, it's getting worse, is corruption. I'm very sure that everything that is being said that challenged Umeme will also challenge UDCL. The benefit of the expense to a poor taxpayer. The problem of our country even becoming worse when people who do not take time to understand certain undertakings want to take the lead in signing MOUs, mixing politics and technical matters, requiring the right people there. I think this one is agreeing with Andrew. Timothy, thank you. Let me volunteer an answer to your question. Why replace Umeme with UDCL 20 years ago? Due to competing priorities, bringing private capital into the electric sector was the best decision. Umeme was not only the best available option, but the only option. No other organization was ready for the job due to the extreme bad condition of the electricity distribution business in Uganda. The bad condition was also meant for a business like Umeme to ask a 20% high interest on investment. 20 years down the road, government entities seem to be having sorted themselves. Greetings to the MD, and we strongly agree with him. Honorable Mara.
Yes.
Andrew has already slapped you as the people who are going to come poking. Your nose is there. I know.
Yes, yes.
Parliament, but also he sits on the budget committee and also sits on the finance committee. How do you, after listening to the MD,
yes,
beautiful words,
yes,
he has done his groundwork,
yes,
seem like they have their foundation made very well.
Yes.
How do you support him in Parliament,
yes,
for such a brilliant idea,
yes,
that is pivoting to what Andrew is talking about, Ugandans owning their country to seeing it successful? This is a narrative that we need to begin to push.
Thank you, Timothy. I think one of the issues I agree with Andrew on is basically the level to which meritocracy has died in Uganda. Recently, we were very happy with the president when he confirmed Dr. Atingi as the governor of the central bank. Atingi is amongst the few people that is very intelligent, that can do a fantastic job. Same thing with Patrick Ayota of NSSF. Now I'm happy to meet Paul, very intelligent. This man has to be supported. And you are now going to also ride on the shoulders of other giants, like Dr. Silva Mugisha, yes?
Yes,
of National Water. He's done a fantastic job there. You have Mr. Mugabe, who has run the bank, Housing Finance Bank, very successfully. So there are Ugandan CEOs who are demonstrating that you can run these things professionally. You will have a board, I believe. Yeah, so for us as Parliament, I think we need to support it because this is a strategic company. It's a strategic industry, which is good, very important for the future of Uganda. Our industrialization agenda will depend on him. So if we fail him, we'll be failing ourselves. And so maybe warnings, as he has said, there are actually some fifth columnists in Uganda here who masquerade that they have powers from above. Actually, what Andrew has said is correct. They run to State House and badmouth people. Yeah? And so a very intelligent, brilliant man who is coming now to help the country. We need many of him, not only in public operations or private sector, and even in government as ministers. We need to have very credible people so that we can push the Uganda development agenda forward. So for Paul, I think if he comes, I don't think he has even to come to us if you need a loan. Because if he's running very well, maybe he needs to go to Minister of Finance and see whether they can give him, how do I call it, a guarantee. Then banks here would give him the money as a company, and he will run his thing. He's sure. And I think we need to look at the laws of some of these public corporations. Unnecessary interference of having a PPDA coming to him, I think that should go off the line. So that we hold you accountable to the outcome, to the results. You are given a performance contract. You pick Ugandans based on merit, because it doesn't mean you have to be a Luo like Omara, Luo Ebdi must be a Luo this, a Luo that. No, you must pick people on basis of intellect, of skills that they bring on the table, on the basis of integrity. And therefore, that company is going to flourish. So I don't think as Parliament will interfere with your work. I know the warnings that Andrew has given, because it's everywhere. Because they are incredibly low-end, low-grade people outside there who run to State House to say they are very powerful, when actually they are nothing. They have never been to any university class, but they think they can run the country. So we must make sure our best of breed are in those strategic positions to help push the country forward. So I'll be very, very glad. And I know that Andrew, after listening to you, believe that we, as a country, the president has done the right thing to say, Umeme, you leave, so that we have UECDL coming to take over. And the guarantee you've given the country is that you have been building the governance and the human resource over the last 10 years. And you are able now and you are in the rural areas where our population live, so that you can build those networks and support our people. And the investment agenda of $50 to $70 million, I think is incredible. If you do that for the next 5 years, this country will definitely change. After all, the stations have been built. What you now need to do, reach the people, and then begin to collect the money. You will have the cash.
Honorable Mara.
So you have my goodwill. Yes.
Lastly, before I come to Madam Jane.
Yeah.
The domestic borrowing.
Yes.
Is a big concern.
Yeah.
The private sector is also playing there.
Yeah.
UEDCL is also going to come in there. The 190 million is coming from there.
Yeah.
This overcrowding of the banking sector is pushing out private players. How do we get other alternatives for funding, especially if UDCL needs the 50 to 70 million dollars? Where else can we look?
So you might
government is borrowing here, UDCL wants to borrow here, private sector is borrowing here. Shall we have any money left?
You might find that the money, for example, there's what we call the single lending obligor limits. So you find that Stanbic Uganda as a bank, they might not be able to absorb all that money on their balance sheet. But since it's a global bank, this heavy thing that we are borrowing can be taken onto the group balance sheet. And so the money might not necessarily come from here, it can come from offshore into the country. And so these international banks, they have a way in which they leverage to bring money to support the local bank. But I hear you that we are focusing a lot domestically, but if there is financial deepening and we have available cash in the country, why not?
From where? What are our options?
Let's give you an example. NSSF has been able to collect a lot of money. You know, over $1.2 billion is in the economy of Kenya. $800 million is in Tanzania. Because inside here, even if you keep the cash here, our absorptive capacity is not there. The private sector we are talking about, even if the money is put in the banks, you know, our private sector here might not be able to take all that money. So that's why some of these monies are put outside, out of the country. But I hear you, if there is so much borrowing of government, because government is a heavy borrower, then it will push out the private sector, or it will make actually the borrowing window rather expensive. As you heard from Andrew, a 10-year bond is going now over 17%. A 20-year bond now is over 20%. So that is really very, very expensive because now people know, we would rather cash in and make the money quickly because of the borrowing of government. So I think we take note. $50 million it needs from Uganda. A few banks can put it together and there will still be some liquidity in the economy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Madam Jane, two aspects, especially you mentioned privatization. How do we make it work for Ugandans, that it is Ugandan-based and brings Ugandan value, especially in return on investment? Two, this debt, if we are closing into 100 trillion in debt and we have all this borrowing, still paid by the taxpayer. Should Ugandans be concerned about this?
Okay. Thank you so much, Timothy. I would like to also, first of all, to congratulate Paul. You know, since this saga, you know, started hitting, you know, like what hits the fan. You know, this is some good news, and I'm really comforted to hear what you are saying. But maybe my worry really is that being a company, you know, you go into borrowing, you know, then you are going to concentrate so much on return on investment, and it goes back to what you are saying, the issue of privatization and regulation. You know, I think we need government to regulate in public interest to ensure that you continue doing what you were doing, you know, because when you look at what Umeme was doing, going to those better places, people who can be able to pay, but you are going to Taleja, to Rakai, to all those, you know, to the last mile person. And my worry is that when you start borrowing, you start looking at return on investment, then you might also start pulling out. For me, that's my word, and it goes to what you have asked about making privatization work. Because you see, when we privatized, it was like anarchy. Government pulled out, you know. There was no regulation. And that's why when you Paul, you talked about governance within your company. We need governance within the country. That's why we are talking about these big people who are above the law, talking about what Stephen raised, corruption, lack of accountability, lack of transparency, the issue of entitlement. I'm entitled to that, I'm entitled to that. Unless we address that issue, you know, we are in trouble. And that's why Paul was saying you have to pray hard. You'll be in trouble. You know, but we need to look at the entire governance as a country, because we have very brilliant people, very brilliant, but they have failed because of those people who are above the law. Now the issue of the debt, we have to be worried, because you see, they tell us the issue of debt sustainability. And we have been talking to World Bank and IMF about debt sustainability, you know, that because they are debt sustainability, they are looking at all these ratios, GDP, debt to GDP ratio. But GDP can be elastic. The other time they were telling us that they, what do they call it, when you reassess your figures, rebasing, you know. It's also, we need to look at other factors when we are talking about debt sustainability. If you are servicing your debt, spending more money on servicing your debt, more than what you are spending on your health, on your education, on water, the entire human capital development, on agriculture, on trade, combined all of them, and you are spending more money to service, just servicing the loan, then there is a problem of sustainability. So for me, I think our debt is no longer sustainable, because sometimes we borrow to repay. Yes, we are doing that. So when you look at our honorables here saying, oh, you get 190, that's what, you know, like we are picking money from our grandparents' home. I get that 190 from Stanbic. I really get worried because it's very expensive.
Yes.
The grace period, 6 months. When you look at what we are repaying in 5 years, that's a lot of money. And you see, because of where we are, because of that indebtedness, the credit rating has gone down. You know, that's why there is no, we don't access concessional loans. Our credit rating has gone down. It has gone down. So there is a multiplier effect. you borrow more money at a higher rate, your credit rating goes down, and you can't access the concessional loan, you have to pay more interest rate. Because you see, like Timothy, if I lend you money and you don't pay, but I hear you have borrowed from Honorable to pay me. Andrew, when you go to borrow from Andrew, he will charge you a higher rate because you are risky. You know, so that's where we are as a country. But there are also issues around fiscal space. Because the more you spend on servicing your loans, you have limited fiscal space.
Yes.
You can't spend on the economy. When I was talking about industrialization, we need to industrialize. We need to increase production and productivity. But where is the money to invest there? And you talked about crowding out to the private sector because the commercial banks would rather lend the government. Why should they run after these business people who can't even absorb what you were saying? You know, so they lend to, you know, so we need to be worried with that debt situation.
Thank you. Engineer Twine, coming to you, what is the future of the energy sector? I read a quote last year at the Energy Forum where you said 10 million customers by 2030. When you look in your lens, with 2.3 now, what are our projections and what do they look like?
Thank you. Based on our census, we still have about 10 million customers to electrify. And as Uganda, we have a policy on how we should approach that. First of all, we are blessed with the sun. We can have people who are off the grid, who are far away, benefit from solar home systems. And actually, even the technology has improved. And you will find that we have a number based on our settlement that they are far away from the grid, that if you push the grid, really it will not be economical. You find like one customer, you may need 2 billion, 5 billion just to chase one customer. So those ones will be off grid. And then those who are reasonably within the grid distance, then we'll put them on the grid. So we are looking at half-half. By 2030, we can have 5 million customers on the grid and 5 million off the grid households. So for instance, we have this project with World Bank already putting in money to connect over 1 million customers. And that's the first task I think Paul has to handle when he's telling you, I have to connect about 400,000. That's a task that he's going to handle. And we have so many development partners that are coming to us to help us. You have heard of this Mission 300 by World Bank and African Development Bank, where they are saying by 2030 we should connect 300 million customers, people in Africa. So we are beneficiary of all those programs, and I think where I sit, I've seen really very good partnerships with grants from EU, with concessional loans, so that we move that drive.
Engineer Twine, what key performance priorities have you given here? As a ministry, what are the targets, short-term, medium-term, and long-term?
There are many. As he told you, one is access. His target minimum in a year should be 300,000 customers connections. That's one. Two is that you should bring it down the power losses.
That's 10 times more than what Umeme has been doing. Umeme has been at about 25,000 people.
No, about 200, 100, somewhere there. So the other one is to bring down power losses from 17% to 14%. And there are many, including power reliability. Really, they have to bring it to a certain percentage. I think 95% power reliability. So the regulator is not seated, and he knows very well that if he doesn't perform, it is issues for you.
It sounded like a threat.
Yeah,
there,
not a threat, but the other thing I wanted to
Yes.
maybe mention, because Jen mentioned about regulation, I want to mention that for the five years consecutively, our regulator has been the best on the African continent. So we have a very good regulator that understands the sector, that understands what happens there, and I think has set very good targets and is able to whip so that the sector is able to move forward very well.
Thank you very much. Lastly, Mr. Mwesigwa, Andrew has given you a warning. Never seen him pray like he has prayed today, so you are in safe hands there. But how are you going to insulate yourself against the political maneuvers that he has mentioned? You are a technocrat, you understand the business, the corporate governance, getting objectives done, key priorities like he has mentioned. How do you insulate yourself so that you're not in the same debacle as some other entities have been?
Thank you very much, Timothy.
And also comments on some of the messages that have been sent.
I've been heading this institution for the last 6 years. And being on top of the institution, there is no environment without what we call job hazards. But if you're doing the right thing, do the right thing. People will follow you. In any community, in any environment, there are people who want people who do the right thing. And that's my message to my people, to the country, even to employees of UEDCL, even others, for us to continue to do the right thing. We shall move with them. And that's how the society behaves in any environment. We have to appreciate the society is just like that. But if the society is like that, it doesn't stop you from doing the right thing. And face what my brother Andrew said, a job hazard. My father, my father's called a job hazard. But
the boy of the 70s.
That's the message.
Yes.
And how do we do it? We make sure that we work within the laws of Uganda. Any law, we subscribe to the latter. Now we are under PPDA. We subscribe to the latter of PPDA. And even now, we've been supplying power under PPDA. We have never run out of transformers. We procure through PPDA, but we plan our procurement, our deliverables on time. Not because we've not had issues where people complain about the procurement, but we prove ourselves that we are doing the right thing, and they live with us. So I'm comforting members that we shall move with the population in the society setting, but it doesn't stop us from doing the right thing. So there are some comments that came in regarding...
there was one on Namisimbwa. They haven't seen power for a month. They're wondering what is happening. That was one of them there.
Yes, that would be a specific one. I don't have the details, but what I could advise that client or that customer to call our toll-free number if it is within UDCL territory, because Namisindwa is separated between, there are some customers under UDCL, the others under Umeme. I need to ascertain when I get the specific details. But as far as I'm concerned, as of today, we know all the areas that we are supplying and all the transformers across the country where we're supplying power, they're up and running. Maybe it's just a local environment which is available. But Timothy, let me talk about the
let me add something to the politics that Andrew mentioned. A political head or member of parliament, I know he will take no offense, Honorable Mara here. You send a transformer for a certain village, he diverts it somewhere else. Such a scenario, how do you handle it? Because what I'm saying is a real example that happened in a district.
So what members should appreciate, an institution as UDCA does not work outside the law. So if, for example, that example comes into play, we say, oh, okay, but where the asset's supposed to go, that's where it's supposed to go. And that project was paid for by the government. If it is diverted, it's against the law. Maybe what we can do, we can scope you in the near future. When funds come to play, we will be given the service, but this service belongs to this area. So you don't make them to lose hope. You keep them with the hope, but within the law. And you make sure that when money comes in the future to connect that area, you fulfill that promise as you've done it. So that's our best way to manage. But you can't keep on diverting. It's like diverting resources. We've had year-to-year audits. Our audits are unqualified financials. For the several times I've been to Parliament, I've not had issues with the Concession because my audit recommendation is I do them well with as a company, and we've not had issues of governance because there is nobody looking at us. No. There are also some funny characters that could come around, but above the law, we are not above the law. We work within the law. That's the emphasis that we should emphasize. And that's what has made us strong and growing stronger and stronger.
We'll have a conversation off air about the law. Let me read some messages. This is a message from Benson. He says, few people are being given jobs. What's the plan for the others on the pending list? Because it would be better and amazing for Ugandans to go back home with jobs. Kindly adjust the number of field officers, meter readers, and generally field men. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, Timothy, for the show. My concern is the rural electrification program. Those corrupt officials even divert lines from where they're supposed to be through bribes and get them to where they're not supposed to be. Okay. This is Gerard from Tororo. Thank you, Gerard. Gerard continues and says, Andrew has mentioned rotten people that are around State House. Does the president know about these people? And what is he doing about it? Who could save us against these evil people? Okay. Timothy, thank you for the show. I love the program. It's very timely. Congratulations to the ED. I would like to extend my thanks to Andrew. I really adore what he has said, the intellectual quality of him saying there. How I wish I would, meet the grandfather, and also he becomes an MP. This is Gilbert Kaseja there, congratulating Andrew. Can UDCL give services and contracts to companies that are Ugandan? At what is the percentage of what they can absorb that is Ugandan? This boo-boo thing, we need to see it. The growing nepotism in the country, especially in critical positions, is becoming something else, okay? Finally, good evening, Timothy. This is Cornelius. My question is about the digital wiring certification that are going to remain as it is, because Umeme, I have 2 clients who have paid for Yaka meters and they have not connected them to the grid. Remember, they had paid Umeme. What happens to them? What happens to these clients? We need clarity, especially after the 1st of April. Lastly, this is Aloysius from Serere. What happens to court cases that Umeme has had? Do they go to UEDCL? How ready are they to pay the compensations that are there? Finally, this is a gentleman from, Luca says, I want to ask the MD about our village planting and, Thank you very much. Thank you for the messages. This is how we're going to be able to do it. I know you will respond to some of them. I hope you've got them. But from Jen to Honorable Mara, Andrew, Engineer Atwine, and then Mr. Mwesigwa there. The floods this morning, the rains that have come in, your thoughts about them, and then your concluding remarks. Because today Kampala was a whole different thing. And we also know that in this season, bridges are broken, roads are impassable, rivers burst. What can we do as a country? I'll start with Jen. I'll go to Honorable Mara, Andrew, Engineer Atwine, and finally, Mr. Mwesigwa, who will make a comment too.
Okay, thank you so much, Timothy, and thanks also to our viewers and listeners for those comments. It shows that they have been listening. The issue of the floods. I left my home in Chiwatuli at before 7. I reached Munyonyo at 9:30. There was a trade review conference and we started really late. So for me, I think if we are to really grow the economy, we need infrastructure. We need to work on our infrastructure. But when you look at what's happening in Kampala, it's the way we are handling the swamps. You know, we are raiding the swamps, putting their soil. I think NEMA, there are people who are above the law, and we have been looking at. That's the issue of governance we are talking about. I think it needs to be handled. But when we talk about infrastructure and roads, it's not just Kampala. The villages there,
Yes.
it's also bad. Yet that's where the lifeline of the economy is. So we need to rethink the whole issue of infrastructure, and that's why when we talk about all these debts, that's where the fiscal space becomes really an issue, that we need government, we need resources to put in our infrastructure. And now on that, my parting shots. One, maybe to Paul, because for us, for taxpayers, your company is okay as a distribution, but maybe we need to look at the entire value chain, you know, the generation, the whole issue of the losses there, the deemed, you know, those deemed, how do we handle that? Because when you look at previously, at the beginning, the entire bundling was to make each sector, the generation, distribution,
transmission,
to make it private sector driven. So how do we handle that so that we are, you know, we as taxpayers, we don't lose a lot of resources? Lastly, I think when you look at the whole Umeme saga, we talked about who signs these agreements.
Yes.
There is a ratification of Treaties Act of Uganda, and I think we need to look at it, you know, Parliament, Honorable, look at that ratification of Treaties Act so that we strengthen it. We need to know who signs, who commits us as a country, who signs on that dotted line. Timothy, I can tell you, we have seen bilateral investment treaties. Somebody scrolls, they take pictures and it's done. Even the ministry doesn't have it. But you go to UNCTAD website, you say, so and so on that day, this minister, this deputy minister signed this agreement, and it's binding. So we need to be able to rethink, look at it, Honorable, look at how do we ratify our treaties, and maybe we can be able to avoid such agreements like this one. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, viewers. Thank you so much, Timothy.
Honorable Omara.
Timothy, the most shameful thing as a citizen is to live in a shambolic city called Kampala. The level of incompetence knows no bounds, actually. Parliament of Uganda approved over $200 billion in 2021 for Greater Kampala rehabilitation. The fact that our roads have not been worked upon up to date, it is basically an indictment on executive. Because we have ministers, parliamentarians, we have all of us inside here. How in the world do we fail to fix our city and cause the citizens to suffer in traffic? You know, everywhere today, if you could look at the photographs, the videos, people were calling all across Kampala. There was a huge traffic jam of 2 to 3 to 4 hours. People are trying to make it to their business, to their offices. Me, I live very close here in Muyenga. It took me over 2 hours to get to Sheraton for a meeting. And I came and I found the road closed this side. I had to go through industrial area. I failed from there. It was like a jigsaw puzzle. So the question, who is in charge? Who is in charge? And even those who now have the lead vehicles even fail now to move, because how would you do that? So I think as leaders, we need just to sit down and say, enough is enough. This is a big shame to the country, and it's an indictment from all of us up to the presidency. On this one, on Umeme, thank goodness their contract is coming to an end. We thank them for the work that they have done. Let's move this to UECDL. And Mr. MD, the country is looking at you. You have a good luck and best wishes. Please go and do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Over to Andrew.
Well, for me, first of all, this morning I cannot let the chance pass. You see, right now as you're speaking, there is a man, I think the company is called Majestic Commodities. He got a certificate from NEMA. His building plans were approved by KCCA to build apartments on about 6 acres of land in the swamp behind Bogolobi, behind the Royal Suites. So this man comes with lorries and sand or maram. He begins backfilling the swamp. So I was called at that time, Keith Makanitso was still alive, by people in Bogolobi, including Keith. And I called at that time the Deputy Inspector General of Police. I went with also the Deputy Executive Director of KCCA, David Luyimbazi, and this Geoffrey Kasegazi. We went and stopped him. Then he came again sometime last year. The people called me because that time I appeared on the scene there. He went even with some people from Ministry of Water. Stopped him again. Now they are saying the guy has come back. For whatever reason, I cannot understand why. Are we waiting for Museveni, the president of Uganda, to drive there to stop this man? Because I ask myself, what is our responsibility? Someone was saying, who are you to call police and all this? What is our responsibility as citizens to the betterment of Kampala? There is a person owning a company called Majestic Commodities. I don't mind him building in a swamp. He can, you know the way they have built the Ginger Entebbe Expressway. When you're approaching Nkumba, you realize that there is a bridge on a swamp. In order not to backfill a swamp, they would build pylons deep inside the...
And raise it above.
And they raise it, so that the swamp continues to flow. This man can go and do something like that. It may be expensive and make his project unviable. But you cannot keep backfilling swamps in Kampala. The whole of Namamvi is a swamp. They have backfilled it. The whole of Nachivu is a swamp. It's backfilled. Everywhere backfilling swamps. So if it rains, where will the water go? The second risk. If you build drainage systems, water flows from Nakasero, Kololo, and all these other hills and goes into Lake Victoria without being filtered through a swamp. It goes into the lake. It is carrying soot. It is carrying oil. It is carrying so many toxins. It will infect the fish will infect the human beings who eat them, or it will kill the flora and fauna in the lake. So it does not require an environmentalist, rocket science, to tell NEMA, to tell KCCA, and now I'm speaking to NEMA and KCCA. You owe Uganda a responsibility to stop Majestic Commodities making a bad situation worse. A lot of Bogolobi has already been backfilled the swamp. Today we have flooded. Everywhere it rains, Kampala floods. In the next 10 years, we will not be able to live in this city because, quote unquote, investors like Majestic Commodities have the license to backfill swamps and stop water from moving, from going to a place where it can settle, be silted or filtered, and then it enters the lake.
Okay. Thank you very much. Engineer,
is NEMA incompetent?
Thank you.
I don't know. Conversation will have some. Yes.
Well, no, this morning floods really it was a very big challenge.
Yes.
I come from Tinda side, and as I passed Naguru Hospital, there was a car floating somewhere there in the trench, and I was like, how did it go there? Carried by water. So my take is that environment challenges are real. And I think the ball is in our hands as Uganda to guard our environment. If I can ask people who are here,
he speaks like a civil servant.
if I can ask in this room who doesn't use charcoal, you will be surprised. But we are cutting down the trees, and I've been telling people, can we spare our trees? Can we spare our swamps? But the other thing is that our culture as Ugandans, the way we dispose, I don't know where we got this culture from. You go to Karerwe there and you see bottles, any item you will find we use in our homes, in our offices, they are floating there. So even if you have drainages as wide as what, you will not survive these such floods. Lastly,
yes,
on Umeme, I want you to comfort Ugandans that actually the sector started preparing a long time ago. We are ready. We had a roadmap. We have been ticking. The last is buyout amount. And buyout, we couldn't determine in January, in February, because we remember continued to invest, and the determination has been done. It will be issued tomorrow. Finance should be ready.
Thank you
to
very
cash
much.
out.
Lastly, Mr. Mwesigwa, the ED.
Thank you very much, Timothy. On the floods, water and electricity,
yes,
one produces the other, but they can't stay together.
Mm.
When the floods come, we in the infrastructure of power supply, we do two things. Either switch it off to protect the population from being killed, or the lightning poles go down, so it causes a problem. So the issue of planning for a flood-free environment is very, very critical, even to other service deliverables. So we believe it's about planning. It is not too late. The city authorities can redesign and do some work accordingly. Then on the issue of electricity, the population should be comfortable that the plan and the project we have at place, it is for the people to strengthen the backbone of this country. The backbone of this country lies on having good infrastructures.
Yes.
Among the critical infrastructure is electricity, roads, and others. So the trend and the financial sustainability model we've developed is towards that. This model caters for both the rural and urban environment. So our plan is to develop across the entire country. Last on Bubu, any product that we're using on the network, provided there's a factory here, our policy we don't import.
Okay.
We're using 100% transformers from here. All the cables are produced here. We're only importing those items where there are no factories here. With that, I do submit. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This message comes in from Lira City. We contribute and buy power distribution lines in the two villages using private companies since we were told when we don't qualify for EEA. Surprisingly, Umeme refused to commission the lines after paying the required fees. They're demanding for a transformer which the community cannot afford. This is Odong Danish from Lira City. I think that's something that you need to be able to look into there. Gentlemen and lady, thank you very much for coming. Thank you for gracing us and speaking about this patent issue. The production team that has made today possible, thank you very much for coming, and thank you for making today possible. We'll end it with this quote. Be careful who you trust. Salt and sugar look the same. Good morning.